Shelf 4 of the large size fiction shelf case. There's also shelf 4. That's the stuff you can see the gap where I took things out. Here's what was there. Books. I think I love novels and fiction. I mean, just the novel is such a beautiful, pure form. I just love it. There's also now just one overflow shelf from the large sized fiction. One quick digression. I just picked this up yesterday. A primer of Freudian psychology. $2 from a bargain shelf outside. There's actually a lot of profound, interesting stuff in Freud. And, that's a hard thing to examine, your own thought process. Crazy what he started there. I used to live in Vienna as a kid from age 7 to 11. Well, my parents had a missionary-related job and walked by significant sites from Freud's life growing up there. I don't know, maybe I'm thinking about Freud too, because I don't know, all that stuff about transference and sublimation. There's a lot of really interesting things there. I don't think it's all nonsense. Ralph Steadman's book about him is so interesting. He had like a cyber jaw for the last part of his life because his jaw had rotted away from cancer. Robot jaw. What? How has that not become part of his iconography? But I mean, you could interpret the existence of this channel in a Freudian way, in a way. Like, just got divorced, and now I'm doing a YouTube channel. So, like, yeah, all of you collectively are like my rebound. Something, sorry. But anyway, not sure how much I want to go into my whole life on this channel. My students will discover it eventually. But, major life change. I've been married twice in my life. First marriage, that's the one my kids are from, like 10 years. Second relationship, like 10 years with a marriage in it as well, like 4 years. And one of the things that led to the end of that was like all this crazy neighborhood violence. Our house kept getting attacked, windows getting smashed, tires slashed. Our house was shot up once. Jeez. It was just this one house on our block that was like crazy, but it just aggravated everything. Made the situation bad. Anyway, accountability, etc. Yeah, let's look at some of these books. This is another one of those books I've just been buying up all the copies I see. I believe I bought this one. I don't think this came from a free box. I love Dover Books. They do all these reprints, but their bindings are great. They last forever, and they put out all this older stuff. I grew up, when I was living in Austria as a kid, we ordered from the Dover catalog all the time because you couldn't always get English language books there. There were English language bookstores, one in particular I remember in Vienna, and I would go to the library at the American International School, where I had gone for 1 year before I went to an Austrian school, and get English language books from there. I read like that whole library at the American International School in Vienna. They had this huge biography section. I think that got me into it. Anyway, Tristram Shandy. I need to read this. This experimental work of the 1700s. A multiform Bildungsroman. I'm like, that's what I do. I want to read a multiform Bildungsroman. And I think nonfiction writers should read fiction. We got to learn about story. And fiction writers should read true stuff so they can bring reality to their work. And everyone should read poetry and science stuff and whatever. Bring it all in. Comic books too. Comic books are like, that's the most like how memory works. All these images and instances next to each other. Both celebrated and vilified when first published in 1759. Have I ever read this? No, I don't think so. But this book is at every school I've ever taught at. I'm like, someone loves this in the public school system. Red Sky Morning. Used to live on Red Sky Ranch land in Arizona. I think that might have been why I picked this up originally. Looks slightly water damaged. I don't like that black blur there. Is that mold? To keep it or not? I will definitely encounter. I'll keep it for now. It doesn't look like anything active, like it's going to rot other books. I don't know. Internet, what do you think? People of the World Wide Web. Maybe it's just slight discoloration and not. I don't dare keep something that has mold on it. Oh, look at that quote. A sort of Catcher in the Rye out west. Huh. Okay. Flannery O'Connor. Good man is hard to find. The collection that established Flannery O'Connor as a master of the short story. One of the greatest American short story collections. I'm fascinated by the short story. Years ago, I tried to write an essay, which is a chapter of book one of my book, called How to Build a Playground, that I really wanted to read like a short story. It's like, well, so I really studied short stories while I was working on that. And I found Rick Bass's short stories particularly compelling and masterful when it came to the form. But Flannery O'Connor had some good ones too. And yeah, I noticed the only difference is I mean, there's some essays that read like short stories and some short stories that read like essays. The conventions can go back and forth. I think of essay as just shorthand for nonfiction short stories. It's like the equivalent in a way, though it's different. And there are varieties of nonfiction essays that are much more narrative and more story-like. But I found, in general, here was the big difference. Essays contain more summary than scene, and short stories contain more scene than summary, including dialogue. And there were other things I noticed too. But anyway, I wrote an essay I was very pleased with called How to Build a Playground, about this time of traveling around with these three dysfunctional brothers, building playgrounds all over the Intermountain West. And, you know, use the whole playground thing as a metaphor for life. And Bless Me Ultimo by Rodolfo, a classic of Chicano literature. I need to tape this front page up. I got ripped somehow, but look at that. Mike, a blessing. Rodolfo Naya. Met him at a Bookworks event back in the day. It was kind of hilarious. It was for Dr. Seuss's 75th anniversary of the book The Cat in the Hat. And Rodolfo Naya showed up and read it at this, like, you know, legendary old master of writing. He showed up and read it, and he kept adding all these New Mexican references and Spanish words and stuff. And the kids were like mutinying and crying. And he stopped reading it halfway through. But a bookstore employee whispered in his ear. So he was kind of like, when I met him. I was like, I wrote a book about the mountains east of here, and I'd love to give you a copy. And he's like, well, just look me up. I'm in the phone book. And I did, and he wasn't in the phone book. That's a great line. But then I met him again, and he was in a better mood the next time. I mean, this is a great book. And he also wrote a book about Albuquerque called Alburquerque with the original R in it. That's on the paperback shelf. I'll read that later. But, you know, I love reading about where I am. I think art can really transform a place. And I happen to live in a really historic river valley, the Middle Rio Grande River Valley. And I love things that are set here. I consider the father of Chicano literature in English. Yeah, I remember he was kind of grumpy that I bought this book instead of his new one that had just come out, whatever that was. He was all, that one's old. Hey, I'm buying it, man. Author of Albuquerque, yeah. The R was dropped. Albuquerque means white oaks, and it's named after the Duke of Albuquerque, Spain. But that first R was dropped as soon as the predominantly white railroad infrastructure moved in. Samuel Beckett's so great. Talk about a guy that gets it. And what a writerly, poetic, rich life. I mean, he had a room that like overlooked a prison. Was that it? Yeah. I mean, Just what an interesting person, and he just advanced the form so much. I got this DVD from the library a few years ago, and it had Waiting for Godot on it, and every other work from around that time that had also been adapted to film. And I watched it all, and I was just like in love with an artist after that. It's just like, so cool what you're doing, man. It's awesome. You're saying smart stuff. You're a philosopher. You're bleak as hell, and I love it. But he's also really funny. He's not just bleak. He's great. Beckett. People always say that Cormac McCarthy became more, he went from Faulkner to Hemingway over the course of his career. But I would argue that Hemingway actually has very lush sentences, and he went to Beckett. He went from Faulkner to Beckett. Yeah. Okay, I've not read this, but I've read Irving Stone and his wife. I mean, she's always credited very quietly. Collection of Van Gogh's letters to his brother, edited collection. And that's just the greatest thing I've ever read in my life. I love Van Gogh. I don't know. I know it's a parasocial relationship when you just like love an artist and feel like you understand them because, in the end, we live alone in the houses of the heart, as Brian Doyle said. And, we all fancy we know these people. Like today I was reading a whole lot about David Lynch, and I was like, I realized I didn't know anything about his personal life, that he'd been married 4 times, that he was, yeah. It's crazy to think that his daughter, I'm always going off about David Lynch lately, but my mind is on there. Eraserhead is kind of about male postpartum depression on one level. A baby that just won't quit crying, and that ultimately results in everyone's death. And then you think that baby, in a way was his oldest kid, who became the director Jennifer Lynch, who very young made the really messed up movie Boxing Helena about a kidnapped woman that gets dismembered. I mean, the Eraserhead baby grows up, makes this movie. It just makes you wonder, do you really know this person, as a parent? As, of course we don't. We just know these people through their work. Maybe it's a little like that show Severance, where it's like you have your innie and your outie, and your work represents this sort of separated thing, this separated persona. And in that way, it's a core. It's a core of who you are. And so it's not dishonest. It's not fake. It's an essence, a distillation, but it's also not a complete picture. And, a lot of suffering happens along the way. I kind of cringe when I hear artists like William Faulkner say, a great work of art is worth any number of old ladies. Just eat up the world to make what needs to be. But anyway, that's me on parasocial relationships. And, and we shouldn't probably put anyone on a pedestal because everyone is a human. But I love Van Gogh. I love him. I just, I love his art. I love his writing. Everything I know about him, I'm like, you're just my people. I connect with you across time and space. I get his demons. I don't know. He's great. So this is a well-researched novelization of his life. I've seen the movie based on it, starring Kirk Douglas. It really emphasized him sucking on his paintbrushes and made him seem a little crazier than I like. Loving Vincent, I think, is a better movie, but a different movie. I've seen so many Van Gogh movies. I think I have 5 or 6. Maybe the best thing with him, though, is that clip from a Doctor Who episode, which is not even a show I watch, but I've watched this clip over and over, where Van Gogh gets to time travel and see his work appreciated. I'm like, why do I tear up every time I watch this clip? It's so beautiful. I'm so going to read this. I can't wait. There's a couple of Irving Stone books on the paperback case, one about Darwin, one about Michelangelo, but maybe I'll read this when I read this. Also, I wonder what came first, the Iggy Pop song or this title. I guess probably the Iggy Pop song. That makes this pretty... Oh, wait, no. Copyright 1961. Wait. 1934. Huh. Okay, yeah, duh. Okay, Irving Stone was of a different generation than I was remembering. For some reason, I equated him with the 60s. So wrong. But I should know because look at this amazing thing I own. I bought this at the Antique Mall in Albuquerque more than a decade ago for $75. I was like, I just can't pass it up. And this is a 1936 book review page reviewing Van Gogh's Letters to Theo. I had that on my wall for a couple years before I finally read it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I was supposed to read this book. One of the greatest things ever written about art, Van Gogh's Letters. I know that it appears in different forms now. Not always called Letters to Theo. Sometimes it's just called The Letters of Vincent Van Gogh, but incredible. Some of the best writing about art that exists. This book's from 1485. I love that. It's so cool to read really old stuff. You just realize, something different's going on here. There's so many different elements that are affecting us and making us of our time. And when you encounter something like, I get this especially from ephemera, but literature has it too, from another era, it really is like just an immediate portal to another time. I love the myths. Arthurian legends cool. Arthurian legends are cool. Sounds like a good time. One of the most readable accounts of the Knights of the Round Table, and it was moving. This book really influenced me and stayed with me. This is a beautiful, awesome intergenerational story that absolutely captures, an ensemble, a world. It's like a Robert Altman movie, and the different generations embody these philosophies and worldviews so well and compellingly. Like the older women in this family, could seem very superstitious on one level. Everything means something, but it just means that their world and their life is so rich, and they're kind of reading the world like a lit scholar reads a text, just connecting it to everything and finding meaning in everything. And it's beautiful and resonant, and it's totally stayed with me on so many levels. I'm always like, I should reread The Joy Luck Club. Very good book. For almost 40 years, there's a movie too that I remember liking. Yeah. It's a mesmerizing novel that alters the way we understand the world and ourselves. Accurate. Yeah. It's cool to read stuff. Just, I don't know. I am not a Chinese woman living in the Northwest, So it's it's pretty Chinese American. It's cool to just experience others' lives, and fiction can really do that. Okay, this should go in the antique section. It's in such good condition. It's from 1924. I don't think I remembered it was this old, but I grabbed this at the thrift store. A lot of times you see things at the thrift store and you're like, I could get that or I could not. And you know that you could see it again. You find it again, so it's not pressing. Should I get this copy of, whatever, Common, Catcher in the Rye or something? You're going to see that again. Sometimes I think about books in my collection, like that Leonard Cohen lyric, my love always goes with you and your love stays with me. That's just the way it changes, like the shoreline and the sea, because the books come and go. You give books away, then they come back to you. But this is one of those books that I saw and I was like, I'm never going to see this again. And it's a great idea. It's this emperor who rules the seas of Earth, Lord of the Sea, from the Xanadu Library. I mean, here's a little corner of literature, probably long forgotten, whatever this is. Copyright 1901 and 1924 by Alfred Knopf. Kind of reminds me of the dad in the movie Ponyo. Pretty cool. Okay, yeah, moving this one to the antique case. Last but not least from this part of this shelf so far, Washington Irving, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow and Other Stories. Washington Irving was the first American author to make a living as an author. And when you think how recently that is in the big picture of life, the 1830s, 1819, this sketchbook. I'm fascinated by Irving, and I think he doesn't get enough acknowledgement and credit. Everyone's like, yeah, spooky stories, Sleepy Hollow. I mean, this guy kickstarted American literature with spooky stories, you know? People like to look down on the genres. But there's some of the oldest stories there are, you know? It says Rip Van Winkle in it. Great story. Interesting. Sleepy Hollow too. Huh. New England really is a vibe, right? That whole, yeah. I used to think it was much more sunlit. Now I think it's much more shadowy. But a lot of my ancestors are from up there. Ooh, just one more. Another copy of Candide. This one's so pretty. It's got lots of criticism accompanying it. Ugh. And Norton Critical Editions. What is Norton? Who are they? They do all these great books that I love. Oh, man. Classics we should all have read, I guess. Everyone knows these. Beautiful old book with a stiff cover. It's great. Love it. Love it. Candide. One of the greatest stories ever. A classic among classics. All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. I've got like 104 subscribers now. That's pretty cool. That's basically 1 million subscribers. I mean, you know.